We're live at Siftach for Coffee and Kabbalah, Parshat Toldos. Parshat Toldos. I love Bereshis. Okay, so this week's Parsha Toldos means the children, the offspring. Who are the offspring? Jacob and Esav, right? So these are the children of Yitzchak, the son of Avraham, and then it repeats itself and it says Avram Holit es Yitzchak, right? Again, it says, why does it say Yitzchak, the son of Avram? Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. So we know that many people but didn't believe that Avram was actually the father because he was too old to have a child. So Hashem made a miracle and made Yitzchak look like Avraham. And okay, now we have in this week's Parsha, the main events that happen are Yitzchak and Rivka wait for children, like all of the Avos for many years. For 20 years, they don't have children, right? Like Rachel and like Sarah before her. And they davened, and Rivka gave birth. And when she's pregnant, it says she had a very difficult pregnancy. And one of the difficulties in her pregnancy, it says, Vayisrotzitzu, this is the third pasuk in the sixth Parsha, or fourth. Vayisrotzitzu abanim b'kirba, the children struggled inside of her. But Tomer in Cain, I remember with my second, I was convinced there's twins because there's like he didn't stop moving. I'm like, there's definitely 4 legs. Like there's too many things moving here for it to be one, right? And she said, Lama Zanochi, like why is this happening? That Telech ledros Hashem, and she went to ask God. So what do you mean to ask God? It says that she asked Shem, who was the messenger of Hashem. She went to the yeshiva of Shem, and Shem, through Ruach HaKodesh, told her what was going on, right? There was no sonograms. This is like the first sonogram, I guess, in history. So what do you mean that she went to ask Hashem? Sorry, so what did he answer her? She said, what's going on in me? Like, I can't, there's like this crazy pain and struggle inside of me. I don't know what's happening. The Medrash says that she was confused because when she would pass a place of idol worship, there would be activity in her stomach, in her belly, and she would pass a place of holiness of a Beis Medrash or Beit Knesset, there would be struggling inside of her, and she said, what kind of child is this, right? It's a very confused child. And Shem told her that this is his sonogram, right? He said, Vayomer Hashem la, and Hashem told her, Shnei goem bebitnech, there are 2 nations, the ancestors of 2 esteemed individuals are in your belly, in your bivitnich, in your belly. Ushnei leumim, and 2 nations will come out of me'imei from your inside. Yiparedu. They will 2 nations will separate. Leum yim amatz. And this is like a very key pasuk in the Torah. We learn so much on this pasuk. So through Shem's through Ruach HaKodesh, Hashem through Shem says to her that the ancestors of 2 individuals, 2 nations will separate from your insides. One will go to wickedness, one will go to purity. One kingdom will always be stronger. Ametz means that one will always be victorious over the other. That when one rises, the other one will fall. It won't be in balance. There won't be one that's always prevailing and the other one on the bottom. One will come up and the other one, they are going to seesaw. One's going to be up, the other one's going to be down. And when it really goes, when the Jewish nation, and we know now that when the Jewish nation is following Torah and connecting to their source, then they're where they're meant to be. And when we turn away from our source, we fall, and Hashem gives the nations the upper hand to bring us back to tshuva, to tefillah, to return, right? So this is our Jewish our history over the nations. Sometimes we're on top, and sometimes when we stray from our source, Hashem gives the power to the nations to prevail over us, but then he punishes them for doing it because they shouldn't have done it anyways, right? And so this is the l'um amatz, one nation will prevail over another. The Rav Yavot Sa'ir, and the elder one will serve the younger one eventually. So this is what he tells her. And she feels better, right? So she's like, okay, I got it. Like, now I'm not worried about my pregnancy. I figure out what's going on. It's twins, like Mazel Tov, right? It's so exciting. And now it came time for her to give birth. And it was right. There was twins. Look, there was twins in her stomach. And what's really interesting, okay, so let's go back there. We learned something really deep that's going on. We learn from this in Chassidus that this story in general in Kabbalah, we learn that Kabbalah is not just looks at the Torah in the Sod perspective of the Torah, that everything in every single pasuk in the Torah is not just happening historically to Rivka, to Yitzchak, it's happening within us all the time, right? So the world is like kind of a holographic way of looking at the world. The world is, history repeats itself, but within us, the messages of the Torah, when it says that Rivka had children within her, it's also telling us that every single one of us, man or woman, are pregnant with twins. And what does this mean? So the Kabbalah looks at the Torah as every single story in the Torah, every pasuk is something that's happening within us and within the world as well, like spiritually with the higher world and within us constantly all the time, right? When we learned that the Yetzer Yaakov Tzacharan, we learned that that's the journey of the soul from heaven to earth, right? So this journey, it reflects within us all the time. So every one of us goes through this journey in life of Rivka being pregnant with twins. every single soul, every human has a point where they're in a crisis and they say, Lama ze anochi, what am I, right? Why is this me? What is going on with me? Our struggle, we are confused, right? On the one hand, we feel pulled to good things. We feel like I'm a good person at my core, right? I'm a good person at the end of the day. I mean well, right? I want to do good for people. I help people. I'm a kind person. And on the other time, sometimes I'm pulled to avodah zarah, to like serving things that are completely, to making things that are empty my God, right? To worshiping things that are completely empty, worshiping materialism, worshiping people, spending hours like caring about the lives of somebody who's just like they themselves don't care about, right? We spend so much time being pulled to things that are completely empty, to worshiping avodah zarah, things, other gods, making things that are empty our gods. We find ourselves pulled to even really bad things, to doing things that are completely, that make us feel horrible about ourselves, and we end up being so confused. We say, Lama ze anochi, right? Like, what am I? So every one of us goes through this phase where we're confused about who we are. We're like, this feels like, if I could just be like, calm and be happy, just pursuing empty things, that'll be fine, right? If I could just be Esav all the way, be like physical, materialistic, just enjoy my amazing materialistic life. Tea? You pick.
Just down.
You pick. Patty? Just not ginger. No ginger. What? Just too gingery.
It's very spicy.
Too spicy. Hi to everyone who's watching live, by the way, and recording. So every one of us struggles. If we can just be materialistic and be happy with it, that would be fine, right? If I could just live in LA and have a gorgeous house and pursue materialism and fame and money and be happy, that would be fine. But then we start feeling conflicting feelings. We start feeling like something's missing. This is wrong. This doesn't feel right. What's going on within me? Why am I so unhappy if I'm pursuing materialism? What's missing? Why do I feel like this is wrong or not bad for having materialistic things, but why do I feel like a life of materialism is just not talking to me? So we feel this conflict, this inner struggle. So Shnei, when we say like that there's it's like our two inner children struggling inside of us. And if we tune into our inner voice, we're going to hear all the time that we have this like inner struggle of these two conflicting banim struggling inside of us. If we really tune in, we're going to be like, well, I want to stay in bed and I want to eat this thing that tastes really good, but I also know that I shouldn't do that and I should be more productive, right? I want to do this, but I also know that I really should go volunteer for that and do the right thing, but I also am lazy and I don't want to. So if we tune in, we'll feel this inner conflict a lot stronger the more we're tuned in. And Rivka paid attention, and she physically tuned in and said, what is going on inside of me? Lama ze anochi, like what's happening to me? What's the words? How does it translate? Lama ze anochi? I'm curious to see. She said, why did I want this? Why did I pray for this? Like, to be pregnant, if this is what pregnancy is, like, why did I even want this, right? So we reach a point where we're just like, what do I want? And then if we're like holy, and we're like, well, let me live a spiritual life. Why am I so pulled to materialism? Why do I keep messing up and doing things that are wrong? Why do I do bad things? Why am I pulled to avodah zarah? And not just materialism, even to evil. Like, why do I mess up and do bad things, right? All of us do bad things. Why did I do that, right? Why did I say that? So we were left with this conflict that eats us up. I'm gonna ask them to close the music. Thanks. There's just so much stimulation right now. Okay. So it's interesting that all she needs is not to be freed from the struggle. She doesn't need to be told like, well, like healed. She is not looking for healing. What she's looking is for answers. And actually Tanya, which the founder of Tanya, the Yutis Kislev, is when like the Alter Rebbe who wrote Tanya came out of prison. It's coming up. The basis of Tanya, and the beginning of Tanya begins by saying that the answer to all of life's questions is by knowing that we're pregnant with twins. And literally it says that know that there's not just one soul in your body, but you're pregnant, you're constantly housing two opposing souls within you. And that is the source of all of your struggles in life, all of your conflict. And we don't need to fix it. We just need to be aware of it. And the awareness of that struggle already makes us feel better. It's like, you're nothing wrong with you. You're not somebody who's pulled in different directions. You're not a two-faced person. You're not somebody who's pretending to be holy, but really you're just a materialistic person who likes nice things and likes to enjoy life. You're not somebody who messes up and like everyone else is perfect and keeping Torah and you're messing up. But you're human, you're normal. God created you pregnant with twins. So as soon as Rivka was like, oh, this pregnancy is not what I expected because I have twins inside of me, she already felt better and took that with her. And then she was like, oh great, it was twins, and that makes sense now. So when we understand and we accept that this is how we were created and God created us intentionally, so not by mistake, it's not by mistake that we have this two conflicting souls inside of us. We are each born, we learn in Alter Rebbe, but the premise of Tanya is that there's two souls, not just one soul. We have one godly soul, the divine soul, the Yakov Avinu that we're pregnant with, and we have one Esav. We have an animalistic soul, animal-like soul, which is human-like, really. In short, we have one soul that always wants to be better, to do the right thing, to be altruistic, to be selfless, to give everyone everything. And then we have another soul that wants to do what feels good for us. And because of that, when we know that we're created and we're pregnant with those twins, that makes it should, when we understand that and the more we're aware of it, it should give us a sense of not being like confused and not feeling like what's going on with me and struggling with it, but rather than saying this is the way I was meant to be and there's a reason for that. And through that, we'll discover that reason, hopefully through the rest of the Parsha. So this story reflects within everyone's being pregnant with twins. And that was it. So Rivka gives birth to twins, and one loved to sit and learn Torah, and the other one was red and hairy and liked to hunt in the field. And he tricked his father. The only mitzvah he did was Chabad aim, and he would hunt for his father and prepare him good meals, and he'd pretend that he's really holy, and you'd ask him really intelligent questions, right? That's the story that we know. The main saga drama in this week's Parsha, right? In this is the blessings, right? It's like getting old. Hashem made him blind, it says, so that he wouldn't have to be in pain seeing the wicked ways of Esav, the woman he took, the avodah zarah that he did with them, right? And Yitzchak he realizes it's coming time for him to die soon, and he wants to bless his children before he dies, but Esav is the Bechor. Before that, we have this really unusual story. It's the weirdest thing, and I keep thinking about it. We have this weird story where Avram passes away, right? And for the Shiva, Yaakov makes a big pot of lentil soup, and Yitzchak comes home from hunting, and he's starving, and he says, give me that soup, and he pours it down, and Yaakov says, no, it's for the Shiva, and he says, I want that red soup. It says, like, the red soup. And it's just so unusual to me that this is in the Torah, because, like, again, we have very little of the lives of our avos, especially about, like, even Esav, right? We have very little about him. We have some things about him, but, like, why do we have to know what soup they ate for the Shiva? Like, what flavor soup, what color the soup was, and that, like, Esav wanted it. Obviously, the story is very pivotal because we learn that Yaakov bought the Bechoras, the firstborn rights from Esav in exchange for the soup. He said, give me the Bechor. I was looking into see, like, meforshim of what the deeper meaning of the soup is. And Chassidus says a little bit, he says that the red soup represents materialism. Like red, when food is red, it actually tastes better when you add color to food. Specifically red makes food more appetizing. So like, let's say I make an eggplant salad, I put red peppers in it just to make it appetizing. So color affects the food. So we learn that red is like the source of like Esav, which is like also like the source of Gvura. In the colors of the spheros, red is Gvura, fire, right, strength, and it's also the color of Mars, which is like the blood, like the star of, like, you know, all that represents Esav, like blood, war, right, hunting, and all of that, the god of hunting and war. So there's a lot of redness. So it's like Esav was saying, give me, all I care about is red and red. I just want materialism. I just want Gvura, and he was deep diverting. Okay, let's get back. So the lentil soup I thought was really interesting. So there he buys the firstborn rights, but then Yitzchak still said, Esau's my firstborn, I want to give him the blessings. And Rivka hears about this, she says, that's not going to happen, not on my watch. Esau's a bad guy, we don't want him to get the power. The blessings hold a lot of power in them. So a little bit, just before that, before the blessing, there's an interesting, we mentioned this a little bit last week. So we have that, this little bit of, first we have that Yaakov, so we have the story of the lentil soup. After the lentil soup story, we have, there's another famine in Eretz Yisrael, right? The famines are always to get us to move to where we need to go to, which is really amazing to know that when something bad happens, just to realize that, like, if we have to go somewhere else for food or for sustenance, if God forbid someone loses their job or loses their place, right? It happened because you were meant to go somewhere else, because there's something for you there. And that's actually where they got the blessing. So this is where they met Avimelech. So they go to this land of the Plishtim, Gerar. They say, don't go down to Mitzrayim, right? Go to where I tell you. So where does Yitzchak go? They go to Gerar. Again, the history repeats itself. He says to Rivka, tell them you're my sister. I love it. It's like, we're just friends. It's like the first, like, we're just friends. She's nothing, right? We're just friends. She's not my wife. It's like, we're just a friend. Just kidding. But, when the local men say, who's this babe? He says, she's just my sister, right? This is literally the Pasukim. It says the local men say, because he was afraid to say she's his wife, because he said they'll kill me because she's beautiful. So again, history repeats itself. I guess they learned from their parents. And then, after a while, when he felt like it's safe to now stop presenting Rivka as a sister, it says Avimelech looked out the window and he sees Yitzchak mitzachik as Rivka. Yitzchak jesting Rivka, and he says, and Avimelech calls Yitzchak and says, she's your wife. Why did you say she's my sister? So the Mefarshim say, what does it mean, Yitzchak mitzachik as Rivka? I brought this for you in the sources. All of it was in the sources. Let's turn our attention to that's the one source I didn't bring. That's he says, so why would the Mepharshim say, why? Because he's laughing with this. Why can he laugh with his sister, who says they're married? So the Mepharshim say that when he says he was laughing with his sister, he was being intimate with her. And he saw from his window that he's being intimate with her. And that why does it say, and it's a euphemism for being intimate, right? And the Torah never says being intimate. It says he knew her, right? It says the other nice words, he came to, right? He came to her. Here it says that he jested with her. It also says a similar term. So we actually, there's a lot about the word Yitzchak. Yitzchak's name is Yitzchak, and we have them laughing together. So we're going to hopefully get into. Let me stop right here and tell us that we learn here a lot about we speak a lot about Yitzchak and Rivka's marriage, and we learn that their marriage was on a very deep level, and that laughter specifically, and why does it choose to use the word laughter here specifically, that he was jesting with her? Obviously there's being flirtatious, but why does it you choose the word jesting here and not one of the other euphemisms that Torah uses? So we actually learn that laughter comes from a very deep place. Chassidus and Kabbalah says the laughter comes from a place even higher than Chachma, and it's specifically from a relationship like Yitzchak's, which came not from love, from Ava, but it came from Gvura, which is a selfless love. So we learn that there's two different ways to love. You can love from Ava, which is just wanting to love, someone who loves love, who wants to be loved and love, which has a certain sense of self. It's like, I love you, right? And there's an I in the present. The more love is about how it makes me feel. So love that comes from just someone who loves to love is more of a selfless love, a selfish love, or a love that includes myself. I love you is a very selfish thing to say. It's like, I love you, you make me feel whole, you make my life complete. And then we learn that there's a selfless love that comes from Gvura. Gvura, in general, chesed is an outward expression. It's like, and Gvura is an inward expression. It's a tzimtzum. It's moving aside to make space for another person. So Gvura is a love that comes from moving myself aside to fully accept and have another person as they are without any sense of myself in the way. I'm not loving because I love love. I'm loving because I'm in awe of this person and I just want to love them and be with them as the way that they are, right? The way I can make them happy. Gvura is about seeing the recipient, and Ava is a lot more about seeing the self. We're not speaking about Avram and Yitzchak here. So we learned that when a love that comes from Yitzchak, specifically from a Yitzchak who's a Pachad Yitzchak, right? The fear or the awe, that's a love that has no me in it. So it's not I love you, it's just you I love. It's about the other person and how I can be there for them. And it's a love that has a lot of respect. When love doesn't have respect within it or boundaries, or it's not mitigated by Gvura, that love is consuming. It's a love that could be even what's the word? It's when someone says like, but I loved her, right? I love her, so that's why I smothered her with love and kisses. It's like squeezing your kid and they're like, stop, right? And other people might say that's not love, that's self-love, right? Sometimes out of love we do things that hurt other people, when really we just we love because we feel like we love, so we want to do this to them. When meanwhile the child or the person is saying like, I don't like this, right? But love, that's an expression of what I feel, is a much more selfish love. But when love is not what I feel, but rather where there's a lot of boundaries and it's about respect and saying, well, what do you need and how do you feel loved? That's a true love, and that love leads to laughter, and that laughter is the highest source. It's the level that laughter that breaks all boundaries. Laughter, we learn that laughter allows like even all of the boundaries that we have, all of the fighting. Someone might be in the middle of a fight. I always bring this example, and then like we're in the worst fight. I'm so angry, nothing will make me not angry, but like my husband will say a joke and I just laugh, and then I can't be angry anymore. Like, right, I can't stop laughing. He's like, I see you smiling, and I'm like, I'm not smiling, and that's it. Like, laughter breaks anger. Laughter, more than shalom and everything, laughter just takes you. And how does it do that? It takes you just above everything, and you're no longer under the clutches of anger. You've risen to a really high place of just being like above the clutches of the he said, she said, and all of the clutches of those emotions. So laughter really does take you to a very high place. It comes from the infinite. It comes from Ein Sof. So when you can have that laughter relationship, when you could bring humor, but humor coming from a very deep place, not making fun of a situation, but just understanding. So I'll get more into laughter as we go along in this week's Parsha about what makes something laugh. But we also, when we say Pachad Yitzchak, it says that the fear will turn into laughter in the end. Okay, that's a little bit about who Yitzchak was and what laughter comes from, and Gvura and all of that. Okay, so he says, why didn't you tell me? I could have married her, and I would have died because of you, right? Because he knows what happened with the other people who tried to marry the wives of the tzaddikim, right? So Avimelech and told everyone, anyone touches this man or his wife, they're going to be put to death. So he protects them. Okay, now we have the Parsha continues, and we have this really interesting where we don't know that much about Yitzchak. It says Yitzchak married Rivka. All we know about them is that since then is that they had children finally. Oh, this happens after they had children, but in the Torah, but it's a time. The timeline is like this is going back in time before they actually had children. So even though the Torah says these are the children of Yitzchak, this is going back a little bit. So He says that Yitzchak stayed in Gerar and he became really wealthy. And Avimelech said, "You're getting way too wealthy. You're becoming stronger than us. You have to leave, right? The main people are getting afraid of you." So Yitzchak left and he went to the valley near Gerar. But over there it says he redug the wells that Avraham dug. I love this teaching. Okay, so Vayelech Misham Yitzchak. I think I brought you these sources. In Perek Chavav, yeah. And it says, "Vayashav Yitzchak vayachpar es be'eretz hamayim asher chafer b'mei Avram." He went to the same place that they dug in the days of Avram, Aviv vayisamu plishtim, that the plishtim stuffed up those wells. Achrei mais Avram, after Avram passed away, vayikra lehen shemas kashem asher kalalin, and he redug those wells and called them the same name that his father dug them. That his father named them. This is so interesting. Why do we have to know this, right? We know, again, like, why is this pivotal for us to know in this story? The Torah picks very specific things. So what can we learn from this? How can we grow and be better people by knowing that Yitzchak redug wells? Again, we said that most of the things in Yitzchak's life, almost everything, happened by a well. When he originally, when it says that Eliezer came towards him, it says he was coming back from, he was returning from Be'er Lachai Roi, where he was digging wells. Where did Eliezer find Rivka? By a well, right? And next week's parsha, we're going to speak about the wells of marriage, because again, Yaakov will meet Rachel by his love of his life by a well too. So we'll talk about them there. But here in this week's parsha, we see that Yitzchak's essence is directly connected to wells and digging wells. Everything in Yitzchak's life almost has to do with wells. So we have over here, I want you to see how many psukim dedicated to Yitzchak digging wells. We have from Pasuk Yudches, Vayachpar be'eretz hamayim, right? Where I read that one to you. Pasuk Yutes, it says again that they went forward and they looked for more wells. 3 wells weren't enough, right? Like 3 wells of water. It says they went in the Nachal and they found another well. Then they went and they found another well, Vayachparu, and then the Plishtim said, "Hey, that's our well." They fought over it, so they said, "Okay, you can have it." They went and dug another well, and then Vayirivu Gam Aleha, and they fought over that well too. Vayikra Shema Sitna, and they called it Sitna, harassment. It was a well of harassment, right? The first one they called Asek. They said the Plishtim said this well is ours. They called it Asek, which means argument. Then they called the next well harassment. Then they went far away. They dug another well. They didn't fight over this one, and they called this one Rechovot. Because Hashem hirchiv lanu, Hashem made space for us, right? It's in a well of expansion. Uparinu ba'aretz. This pasuk in the Torah is a song, a niggun Chabad. Vayatek misham, vayachpor be'er acheret, and they dug another well, v'lo rav, and they didn't fight over it, because there's a lot of depth in just this pasuk. There is like a whole deep mimer. Vayikra shema rechovos, vayomer ki ata hirchiv Hashem lanu parinu ba'aretz. It's just so crazy how like there's one pasuk that has so much depth for us on the meaning of life, but I'm not going to get into it today. I have a horrible voice. We'll send it to the group. We learned it in high school. It's a very hard tune to learn. It took a long time to learn it. The chorus goes, Vayikra Shema Rechovot, Vayikra Shema Rechovot, Vayikra Shema Rechovot. The rest of it is harder. But it's just funny that this is a thing. Anyways, this is really interesting. Vayal Misham Beersheva. Okay, so that's the 6th well they dug, right? 3 wells of his father he dug up. Then they dug 3 more wells in this valley. They didn't fight over the 3rd one, Rehovot. Then they go up to Beersheva. Now, Beersheva is a place where Avraham and Avimelech before him made a promise to not bother each other and not to infringe on each other's territory. So, and they called it Beersheva because they made a promise. So he goes there. And Hashem appears to him at night, and he says, I'm going to give you blessings. Anyways, he promises to give him blessings. Don't be afraid. He makes him his beach there because Hashem appeared to him. And they, again, and his servants dig another well. This is more and more psukim about wells, whereas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 psukim about wells, okay? 8. Then Avimelech went... Then Avimelech sends his army general to him, and he says, "Why are you coming here? If you hate me, you send me away from you." He says that we see that Hashem was with you and with your father, so we want to continue the oath that our fathers make and make a new oath. So they made an oath that because the oath wasn't fulfilled because the Plishtim stuffed up his wells, so clearly they didn't fulfill this. They want to renew the oath because I could see that Hashem is with you everywhere you go. So I want to make a new oath for you and all your descendants. So they made a new oath, and they made the oath over a well. This is the pasuk. It's still about the well. Okay, they made a whole feast. So he says that we're not going to harm you. You won't harm us. None of our descendants. We're going to be in peace forever. We don't want to mess with you. So they make this oath, this like peace treaty, this diplomatic pact between these two diplomatic leaders, and they have a big feast. And on the same day, it says the servants came and said, "We found another well." And Yitzchak says, "Great, we're going to make the oath over this well." And they called this well Shiva, the seventh well that they dug, and therefore the city is called Be'er Sheva until today. Okay, it says whenever it says until today in the Torah, it means until whoever's reading it now, which is one of the proofs that the Torah is divine, because every time the Torah says today, thousands of years ago, those things where it says Hebron is called it until today, it's still called Hebron. There's many cities that have changed names multiple times, but these cities that are written by the Torah are still called that. Anyways, that's just one of the ideas, and they've had new archaeological findings over the years that they found artifacts near Beersheba that date back to the year that this happened with Yitzchak, and they even found wells over there. So they really have this solid down. So we have a lot about. Okay, so basically we have. Can someone do the math? What's Yitches to 18 to what's the last pasuk about wells? To what that means, right? To what that meaning of digging wells is in our lives. So one thing one beautiful top teaching that it specifically says that Avram's wells were stuffed up and Yitzchak redug those wells. So I heard a beautiful teaching about that. So often Avram's wells represent that his well springs, his source of his love, right? Our well springs is when we dig down into us and we have the well springs and all the source of everything good we have in our lives, right? Our well springs of Emunah, we have our well springs where we can fill ourselves and dig deep and uncover a love for Hashem, right? Our well springs in spirituality, right? We have our well springs inside of us. We have our soul, which we dig into, and we can find well springs of love, well springs of faith, right? Every time we go through a challenge, we uncover more and more well springs of this faith, this power, this koach, this Emunah that we have, bitachon, right? So Avram, when it's spiritually what it means, again, we're looking at this Torah as every one of us, we have our fathers, right? We may have a father that dug, let's say it this way, Yitzchak, so Avram's well springs represent his reservoir, his well springs of tremendous faith he had in Hashem, right? He was the protagonist of monotheism in the world, right? So Avram had this tremendous faith in Hashem, but Yitzchak recognized that we have to redig Avram's wells that were stuffed up. And what that means is that many of us might be living today, we might be living nourishing our faith and our Judaism with the well springs that our fathers dug, that our parents dug for us. And when we have children, they're nourished from our well springs, right? We have our faith and we pass it over to them. We teach them about Hashem and that Hashem is with us all the time, but we shouldn't be afraid. This boy is too cute. And we are nourishing our children. And there comes a point in the child's life, right? And we should give that to our children, and we should nourish them with our well springs and pour that and nourish them what they can through example, through them seeing that we are not afraid, that we have Emunah in Hashem, that we say, don't worry, Hashem will help us, right? That Hashem is in charge of everything. Hashem is with us all the time, right? Hashem is everywhere. Hashem is inside of us. And our children will hopefully get that from our well springs. But there comes a point where we need to empower our children to dig their own wells, because there comes a point where even the most deep of well springs, like the wells of Avraham Avinu that he dug, right, his reservoirs of Emunah, his reservoirs of connection to Hashem, are not enough to sustain our children. Because we learn that even the wells of Avraham Avinu, the father, even if your parents were the greatest people and they raised you in the best home, that's not necessarily enough for you to be sustained and nourished forever, right? Even Avraham Avinu's wells were stuffed up. Even the wells, could you imagine? Avram's well, something that he touched wasn't forever. They were stuffed up. His reservoirs could be stuffed up over the next generations. It doesn't necessarily mean that because your grandfather was the greatest man in the world, right, that you're going to have that within you. And Yitzchak recognized that it's not enough. We have to redig those wells. So he redug Avram's wells. Again, he redug those wells and filled them. But he also went up and to make his own wells. He said, I need to have my own well springs. I need to create my own reservoirs. And there comes a point in our lives where we empower our children. We say, that's what I think, but you need to see what you think, right? That's what I feel. My Emunah comes from this, but you have to figure out where your Emunah comes from. Where does your faith come from? Where does your path in life, right? Where do you discover? And we have to let go a little bit and let our kids go on their path and go on their journey and fall and get up so that they can dig their own wells, right? We have to really empower them to know, and every time they turn to us and say, what do you think, Mommy? You say, I think this, but I want you to pick for yourself. It starts in small ways when they're like, what color do you like best? Which one do you think I should get? And you say, I like this, but I want you to pick what you like, right? And we empower them and hopefully teach them that they should dig their own wells. And we as adults, often we rely on our home that we grew up in, our communities, the wellsprings that we were given to fuel us to stay from. That doesn't work forever. There's going to be a point where that's not enough anymore, where we go through struggles in life, where our parents nourishing us with love for Hashem is not going to be enough for me to continue to be firm in the face of so much struggles. If everyone around me isn't doing it, or if I'm struggling so much with faith, if like, why should I daven, right? We need to dig our own wells. We need to dig really deep. We need to go to my soul and do some soul searching and dig wells and reservoirs and fill those with water and nourish those and find more meaning, right? If we're finding that I don't even know why I'm doing this, that's what we need to stop and learn. We need to stop. Before, some of us it's learning, some of us it's connecting through nigunim, through for bring-ins, through emotions, through mentors, through inspirational people, talking through it with people. Every one of us needs to work really hard to dig our own reservoirs. It doesn't mean that because your well is dry, your well is run dry, that, oh, this means I shouldn't serve God anymore. It means you got to dig more wells. You got to nourish your well. You have to keep digging at it and keep nourishing your emunah, because emunah does run dry, right? Even though we, at our core of our souls, we have a water. A well means that the water is already there, right? It's not new water you have to bring in. The emunah is there. Every Jew is born with a soul that loves Hashem, that has a natural love for Hashem, but we need to keep digging it because it could get stuffed up. So the emunah doesn't go away, right? The water never leaves, but it does get covered up with dirt, because there's dirt in the world that will cover up that natural emunah and reservoir that we have. So we have to sometimes peel back the layers of dirt that we've accumulated over our life, the garbage in our lives, physically, right, that we've accumulated the garbage, and like emotional garbage that we've subscribed to, emotional things that we've like taken upon ourselves, beliefs that we've taken upon ourselves. We have to just filter away and take away some of that garbage and get back to the core and redig those wells that are already there within us, and not just be nourished from our father's wells, from our mother's wells, from our community. And I think that applies to every one of us. I think each one of us has a certain part of our like lifestyle, and the reason that we do things the way we do and continue things is because like the way my parents did it. Like I love Shabbos because my parents did it that way, and that's great, but we need to get to a point where we're digging within ourselves, where we have our own reservoirs of wells within us as well. So Yitzchak understood that, and that's the beauty of so much about Yitzchak. And now here is where it gets amazing. It doesn't say that Avram's well lasted forever. Avram's wells were Be'er-sheva, right? So when it says that Be'er-sheva was called because Yitzchak named it Be'er-sheva, the seventh well, and not because it was called Be'er-sheva because Avram made the oath previously already called it Be'er-sheva with Avimelech, right? Many of the commentaries have huge problems with this. Some of them say that there's two different cities, because it doesn't even make sense. Like, but it says if he went to Be'er-sheva, right? It doesn't say there's different cities. So there's many explanations about it. And one of the commentaries says that it was the same city, but the reason that it lasted until today, the reason that Be'er-sheva, the whole city, he named the well Sheva, not the city. Yitzchak named that seventh well that he dug the well of the seventh, because it was the seventh well that he dug. And the whole city adopted that name until this very day, thousands of years later, until today, because it came from Yitzchak. And Yitzchak's love and Yitzchak's wellsprings, digging deep, came from Gevura, which is a much more lasting type of effect than Ava only. And we need that's really what I wanted to learn, that we have to really learn to bring more Gevura. Gevura has less of myself and what I feel, and more of an awe and a respect, and more of moving myself aside in its symptom. So if we want a relationship that's going to be forever, it has to be less about what I love and like me loving the person as I want to love, and stopping and putting myself aside and making space and saying, how does this person want to be loved? That's a love that lasts, right? A love that's going to be forever until this day comes from moving myself aside of Gevura, of going inwards, making space, or just like Gevura goes inwards. That's what a well is. It's not bringing water from above or from outside. It's just going inwards to what's already there and uncovering what's very deep and there. So that's a little bit about well digging and how that has to do with Gevura. In general, there's two ways to approach things. If there's a problem in my life, I can approach it in the chesed way, which is like, even in therapy, there's like the solution-focused therapy. We're going to talk about this in Hanukkah really soon with Hillel and Shammai, because Hillel is chesed, Shammai is Gevura. But in short, chesed is dealing with the problem by bringing outside things, and Gevura would deal with the problem by digging deep to getting to the root of the problem, like digging a well and getting to the core of the problem, which is a longer process, but it lasts. The results are longer lasting, because if you just deal with the symptoms, if I'm having a fight, right, and I'm just dealing with the symptoms, and I'm not getting to the root of the problem, then I may have done it in a chesed way, like brought more light, right? Been like, let's say my child's really upset, and I'm just like, this is amazing, everything's good, here's a snack, here's a candy, right? And make him feel better. The problem's not going to go away, right? It's not long lasting. That's a chesed way of dealing with it. That's like a well that gets stuffed up again later, right? It's not going to last. But if I go to the root of it and say, what are you feeling? Let's see where you're feeling it in your body, and try to get to the root of where it's coming from, and take that time and patience to do it the Yitzchak way, then that well is going to be forever, because I've gone to the root of it and gone to the source. So that's a Gevura way of dealing with things. So in this week's Parsha, we learned that even though when we err, when the way we treat another person should always be with chesed. If we don't know if it's chesed or Gevura, sometimes we need chocheach to chesed misacha, but if we're unsure, we should have chesed. But the way we look within ourselves to deal with things, not that we should be harsh in a gevura way, but the way that we live life to be with that a chesed that also has the element of gevura within it, a chesed that has boundaries, that questions, a chesed that says, what about the recipient of my love, right? What about the recipient? What about them? So when we look at ourselves, we should be able to mitigate our chesed with boundaries, not just buy everything that we want and do everything and say everything we want, that we pause, we have a moment of gevura, of withholding, of being not spitting out everything that we want to spit out and just, well, I love this kid, but do they want a hug right now, or are they going to be upset if they have the hug? So if they receive that hug, and really going deeper and not just bandaging every booba that we have, and with like distractions in life, but really going deeper. I'm giving different examples, but really taking the time to go in a gevura way, to have an everlasting way, to go deeper, to see what am I feeling right now, not just being like, forget about it, doesn't make sense, doesn't like, there's no point of talking about it, it's not going to get better, but taking a moment to go inwards and say, where is this coming from, what is this triggering, what am I feeling, getting more, it's like, and having a more everlasting, real results coming from that. Okay, so we talked about the birth of the twins and how every one of us is pregnant with twins within us, and we're constantly having the two opposing forces within us, the struggle within us, and how the awareness of that really helps us throughout all the struggles. Just being aware of that we're pregnant with twins.